What's up, everyone? I am the Creative Doc, bringing you another video on how to establish your first childcare business. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. I have lost a few inches off my hair, but without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you haven't already, I suggest you go back and watch my very first video on establishing a childcare business. Now, on that video, I mentioned things such as writing your vision. What do you want your daycare to look like? We talk about why do you want to start a daycare business? And then we also mentioned business proposals and how that's your blueprint or your guide for what you want your childcare business to look like. Your next question may be, what type of credentials do I have to establish a daycare business? Well, for me, I sort of worked my way up, and a daycare business was not something I saw in my future, but it did bring everything else in my other experiences together. For example, I started off as a teacher. I am certified to teach early childhood and elementary education, and then I also have a certification in English as a second language. I don't have any certifications in leadership or administration, but I do have prior experiences in being a director for the early childhood program at a local technical college. I really enjoyed working as the director and instructor because it actually gave me the ability to work with other adults who just discovered that they wanted to become teachers. So I felt that here's my chance to give them the tools that they need to successfully become teachers and to do something that they've never done before. And that's to make a difference in the classroom and change lives. But I also got a chance to place those prospective teachers into early learning centers where they could work with the current teacher to get that hands-on practice. That's how I was able to find out how a daycare actually functions, by going into these facilities and by supervising our prospective teachers who are already working in those facilities. So let's go back to my question on what type of credentials do you have to establish your daycare business. You may have not gone to school to be a teacher. You may not have even had that daycare experience, but it is not too late for you. There are some childcare programs as well as colleges that offer a CDA. And so what a CDA is a Child Development Associate Certificate. So it's probably about maybe a year long, but what that does is it gives you those basic skills that you need to know to be successful in the area of child development. So a CDA may touch on child development, it may touch on the curriculum, it may touch on leadership, classroom management, and other skills that are important in the field of early childhood. Now, some early childhood programs or colleges may offer basic certificates where you can receive it within 2 to 3 semesters. And so those certificates may include courses such as an introduction to early childhood. It may include growth and development. It may include health and safety. It may also include a curriculum and assessment course. And then you have some that may even require you to do a practicum or internship to kind of give you that hands-on experience. Now, if I had to sum up the components of a daycare business, I would say a huge part of it is that child development portion. So you have the child development portion. The next part is establishing a curriculum. What are you going to teach the children? Surely you're not going to just sit there and babysit them. That's my motto. We don't babysit, we teach. So you have to have a curriculum in place. You also should have a way to assess that child to see if they are on level with the rest of the children their age. Now, a lot of times they may not be, but what are you going to use to help that child strengthen their developmental skills? So another part or another component of the early childhood or daycare is the health and safety part, because we do have a duty, and that's to keep those children healthy as well as safe. And then another portion of that would be the hands-on part. What are you going to do once you get into the classroom? What's your goal? What's your idea? What's your plan? What's your plan when you get into that classroom? How are you going to teach those children? My state has a list of requirements for both teachers and administrators. So one of the requirements is, of course, the application. The next is references. We do have to have 3 references. We also have to have a state driver's license or identification card. Another thing we have to have is a TB or tuberculosis skin test. We also have to have a physical exam because you do have to be physically capable to take care of children. A huge part in the child care is background checks. So we do have to have a clear background check in order to interact with children. Not only do we have to have a background check, clear background check, but we also have to have a child abuse and neglect form, a clearance form. So those are just a few of them. Another requirement would be those child development and health and safety courses. So we do have to have annual training courses. And then we have to have a CPR certification. A high school diploma or GED is also a requirement. I'm sure I'm missing a few other things, but that's just to name a few. As a former teacher, I can say that a lot of times the classroom practice is different from your actual hands-on experience. So we can have a lot of information about early childhood and teaching and working in the field, but until you get into that classroom, you really won't know what to do or have an idea on where to start. So before you decide to open up a daycare center, I believe that it's important to have that hands-on experience, whether it be an internship or, as I mentioned before, a practicum. One thing I've heard from a lot of my applicants that apply for the job is that I babysat before, or I babysat my 6 cousins before. Well, when they get into the daycare, they find out that babysitting is completely different from actually being a child care provider, in my daycare at least, because I require our teachers to actually teach the children and not babysit them or sit them in front of a device for them to watch all day long. Being a daycare or child care provider, you also have to know how to multitask. Well, at least the teachers do as well. So for teachers or for child care workers in the classroom, they have to know that I not only have to follow the rules of the daycare, but I also have to follow the state standards and rules as well. So they have to know the proper way of doing certain things and handling certain situations. One example of how babysitting differs from being an actual childcare worker or provider is that at home, you may use a microwave to warm up your baby's bottle. Well, in the daycare, you cannot use a microwave to warm up the baby's bottles. Another thing that may be different between babysitting and being a childcare worker is that at home, you may sit your child in front of your computer screen, iPad, or cell phone and allow them to watch a certain type of video that sings and has dances in it. But in a daycare setting, they cannot watch, or at least in my state, they cannot watch screen time or have screen time if they are under the age of 2, and they can also only have screen time that pertains to educational and physical activities. So it cannot be useless watching videos. So it cannot be anything that does not pertain to educational and physical activity. We also have to understand that depending on if that child is in daycare for half a day or full day, they're going to get either 30 minutes or an hour of screen time, educational screen time. So I have to refer back to my previous video when I say that a lot of your rules, your procedures, and your standards are going to come from your state Your state will tell you what you can and cannot do as it pertains to your childcare business. So all in all, having a degree in early childhood is not an absolute requirement, but it is strongly recommended that you at least have a CDA, which is a Child Development Associate Certificate. Okay, so we talked about the credentials that are a must-have or strongly recommended to establish a daycare business. So now let's get a little up close and personal. Closer, 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 a little bit more closer. Now we see this all the time. 3, 2, 1. Ribbon cutting. But do you know exactly what ribbon cutting means? Do you know what it means behind the scenes? That is very nice. It's very fun. It's very exciting. It's a positive thing. It's something to celebrate. But I gotta be honest with you. It's a lot of tears behind that ribbon cutting and bottle popping. On my journey, or before my journey to entrepreneurship, I did not realize how much comes with entrepreneurship. I did not realize how many people are deceiving others. People are not being honest about what comes with entrepreneurship. They're not telling people the negative parts about it or the things that are challenging about being an entrepreneur. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a blessing. You get flexibility. You are in control of your own schedule, but it's not easy at all. You pretty much leave a 9-to-5 job and end up working a 6-to-6 job. That means open to close. Instead of working 5 days out of the week, you're probably working 7 days out of the week. So while your staff is enjoying their holidays, you are at your business working, cleaning, planning, and other things that are very important before your children arrive. There are many days where I've cried, where I've bawled my eyes out, where I just did not want to do daycare anymore. I just could not do it. I lost hope. There are also people who have encouraged me to keep pushing by saying, it's gonna get better. Give it some time. That's what my husband would always tell me. Give it some time. You're not giving it time, because a lot of times we jump into things and we're wanting an immediate response. We're wanting to immediately receive the benefits that come with it. But it does take time. I'm telling you, it takes time. One of the struggles that I encountered in the beginning of establishing my childcare business was finding good workers. So this was around the time where we were kind of in the middle of a pandemic, or just now trying to get over the pandemic. So there was money being handed out to people. Nobody wanted to work anymore. It was just ridiculous. It was horrible. It was hard finding people. So that was one of my struggles. So after a couple of months, maybe close to a year, especially being patient, changing the way I do things as well, I was finally able to secure good workers. And I can say that people were honest with me when they told me that who I start off with in the beginning of my licensing is not who I'm going to end with. So people are going to come and they're going to go. So you have to realize that that's going to happen. You have to find a way to cope with that, because that's going to happen. Once you have been through the disappointment, once you have encountered those challenges, they are no longer challenges. They end up being water under the bridge. The hardest part is actually going through it. So we can go to these things, we can encounter these things, but we won't know how to get through it until we actually try. So once we get through it, and we see the light at the end of the tunnel, it's no longer a challenge or obstacle to us. Another challenge I faced was dealing with difficult parents. So you're not always going to have those easy to work with parents. You're going to have some that are really difficult to work with. And that's your job, to stand firm, but to also show compassion, but to also have those customer service skills that you need to continue running your business. You have to understand that you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. You're going to have to understand that you will not be able to satisfy everybody. So the best thing to do is to do everything you can, be the best that you can be, come in every day with a smile on your face, and to keep pushing. Another thing you have to understand is that you won't be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. But the best thing about mistakes is they can be corrected, most of them. There are a lot of other obstacles and challenges that I can share with you all, maybe too much to share, but I can be honest and say that those challenges become strengths and they get better over time. Sometimes it takes 1 year, sometimes it takes 2 years, sometimes it takes longer, but trouble does not last always. I am a witness to that. Something else I can speak on is your license procedure. And once you go through receiving your license, you'll start to see what your state is looking for when they do their visits. Most of the things that they look for are going to be in that manual, in that book that they've already published or put out for you. One thing that one of my closest family members have shared with me was that I'm not going to get a perfect score on my license. And I have not had a perfect score on my license. There are errors and things that they're going to find. We call them deficiencies, but there are deficiencies that they're going to find that you need to correct. Don't take it to heart. Just correct it and make sure that you do better by not having that same deficiency. It can be something as small as not putting your plug cover back in, to having tree branches on your playground. So it can be anything, but just make sure it's corrected before the next time they come. Being organized also helps you manage a lot of your challenges that you may face. And when I say be organized, I mean keep sticky notes. Write things down on a calendar on your desk so that you'll remember. So kind of keep things organized. It will help you, and your parents will thank you for it as well. And it's okay to cry. It's okay to have your breakdowns. It's okay to bend. But you can't break. Don't break. There are a lot of times I've had to walk out of my office and just go sit in the car and just cry in the car. Just let it out in the car. Sometimes scream in the car because I don't know how and I don't know when and I don't know why. But it's okay to do that because why? You're human. You make mistakes. You have emotions. You bleed like everyone else bleeds. You breathe like everyone else breathes. So it's okay to go out and have your moment. I even encourage my teachers to step out and have their moment. But of course, they have to have classroom coverage first. I hope this video has helped you know what type of credentials you need before starting or establishing your new daycare business. I hope I was also able to encourage you that when you have your breakdowns, when you have your I don't know moments, to take a break from it and then handle it later. And I also hope you understand that behind the ribbon cutting and behind the bottle popping is a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. Don't let it fool you. Just keep smiling, praying, and pushing. Prayer changes things, I'm telling you. Keep going. You got this. And again, we're going to walk this thing out together. If this video was helpful to you in starting your childcare business, I want you to like, comment your questions, and subscribe. See you next time. Bye.